Now, the Ahnenerbe were very, very successful in their research. And such authors like Nick Cook, in his book, The Hunt for Zero Point, has done a lot of excellent investigative work into what technology the National Socialists were able to develop. And there's some excellent academics who are looking at this. One guy is Nicholas Goodrich Clark from Exeter University. He's a professor in the School of Western Esotericism there. But he's also a specialist on the occult research of the Ahnenerbe. There is much black technology that is around that we don't know about. I am going to propose to you that whilst I'm not in any way disputing that there are UFOs that do not originate on this planet, there are certainly UFOs, what we would regard as UFOs, that do. And this technology has probably been around for 50, 60 years. The reason Patton did not go hell for leather for Berlin at the end of the Second World War was because he was instructed to make a beeline for the Skoda factory that was just across the border in Czechoslovakia, because that was where a whole bunch of the German scientists were based who were working on a lot of the esoteric projects. And these scientists were smuggled back to America under an operation called Operation Paperclip. And top of that list was a guy called Werner von Braun, who, of course, ultimately developed the rocket system that allegedly took man to the moon. Has anybody ever wondered why it is that all the moon landings occurred under the Nixon presidency, the most honest president in history? You recognize this symbol as the death head symbol of the SS, except this isn't the death head symbol of the SS. This is the death head symbol of Skull and Bones. Hitler's SS was known as the Brotherhood of Death. Skull and Bones is known as the Brotherhood of Death. And there is another group that we'll look at later that's also known as the Brotherhood of Death. Very, very strange bedfellows. Skull and Bones really came to the fore when George Bush became president, but more so, of course, when he was running against John Kerry, because they were both Skull and Bonesmen. And the media failed to probe this very strange coincidence. Only 15 people are inducted into Skull and Bones in Yale every year. It's estimated that there's something like about 500 and maybe 550 Bonesmen alive. And yet these guys are very much at the top of the tree throughout the powerful organizations in the US. This is my chart of the hierarchy of the brotherhoods in the US. This is the way it works. This is how everybody is kept under control in the US. So, if you don't want to call it the United Soviet States of America, you can call it the United States of Freemasonry. Skull and Bones at the top. They fought long and hard for the ascendancy, and they're there. They have made sure that they have players at the senior level on the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. Now, Skull and Bones is unique to Yale, so that means there's a hell of a lot of other universities that obviously are not covered by Skull and Bones. And these guys are mocked up by Phi Beta Kappa, which is one of the oldest fraternities in the US. Phi Beta Kappa was established on December the 5th, 1776. It was established by a group of people who were pissed off that they weren't invited to participate in establishing the Declaration of Independence 6 months previously. So Phi Beta Kappa is effectively the subordinate organization that sort of takes care of anybody that wasn't at Yale. And Phi Beta Kappa players are in all of the senior leadership roles in the administration through the US. And then we have the Shriners. In the US, Freemasonry is far more open than it is here. In the UK, it's estimated that there's about 700,000 Freemasons, and nobody really knows for sure. But in the US, it is reported that there are over 10 million Freemasons. And they wear it on their belt buckle, or they wear a badge to say they're a 32nd degree Mason. And one of the things that I learned while I was working there is if you really wanted to get anything done, I mean, I wasn't a Mason, I'm not a Mason, never have been, never will be. But if I needed things done, I needed to have a Mason as my right-hand man. So once I actually realized the rules of the game, and I had a 32nd degree Mason as my sort of lieutenant, if you like, then we actually were able to sort of do what I'd gone over there to do. And at the lower level, the blue degrees, right, percolating, just the same as here, the police, business leaders, civil servants. And if you piss anybody off, God help you, because these guys can call all the shots and they can run you out of business. The order out of chaos. They're very, very successful at creating the chaos. And of course, they've been pretty successful so far at offering the solution. But we're starting to see through them. Now, after the Second World War, Eisenhower, in his final speech before handing over the presidency, made the observation that the US needed to beware the power of the industrial military complex. He knew, he'd seen it firsthand, the power that had come to the industrial complex because of the need for armaments in particular during the war effort. He knew that these guys were potentially loose cannons. But the coup d'etat was at Dealey Plaza. Ostensibly, America has not been under the control of the president in any way, shape, or form since that day in 1963. I'm not suggesting that the leaders of the UK have any more power. I mean, these guys are the front men. These are the media players. They're not calling the shots. This will be the third year that I've stood on this platform and mentioned this document, the Project for a New American Century, Rebuilding America's Defenses. The document that was published in 2000, September of 2000, 1 year before the Bush election. Sorry, a few months before Bush was elected, because he was appointed in January of 91. But this is the blueprint. This is absolutely the blueprint for everything that has occurred since Bush became the occupier of the White House. There should be no surprises. And of course, the famous phrase on page 51 is that, America really is going to struggle to get the popular support for these ambitious global objectives unless there is some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. And these are the guys. What a bunch. What a bunch of guys. Paul Wolfowitz, of course, he went from being Assistant Secretary of Defense to head of the World Bank, but he couldn't resist dipping his pen in the company ink, and, of course, had to resign a little while ago because he was effectively guilty of nepotism. This is Scooter Lewis Libby, who was recently found guilty of releasing the name of Valerie Plame, which was an act of retribution for her husband, Joe Wilson, for not actually towing the White House line over the Niger yellowcake issue. And, of course, he was sentenced to jail. He was sentenced to 2.5 years in jail. But the moment that he was sentenced to jail, George Bush overruled the sentence. Immediately, this is a classic indication of the fact that America is under a dictatorship. The president can immediately overrule the legal system. And Dov Zakheim, of course, here, Rabbi Dov Zakheim, he's the guy who on September the 10th, 2001, announced to the media that the Pentagon could not account for $2.3 trillion. Small change. The symbolism. We see symbolism of the brotherhoods in Paris, very much. We see it in London in a big way. And, of course, we see it in Washington. And we see here the seal of the US on the back of the dollar bill. Here we see Bush waving the dollar bill. And here we see the word Mason, here, M-A-S-O-N, within the inverted pentagram. Here we see the pentagram in the streets of Washington.